Hey everyone, this is Sandip back with another video. And in today's video, we are going to make a note-taking app using Node.js, the really popular technology on the server side. And this video will be completely practical and this will give you the idea how to get started. It's like a quick start guide into the uh, into the world of Node.js. So let's jump into the agenda of the video and let's get started. Okay, so this is more of a getting started guide with Node.js. If you see here, so we are going to make, and this is going to be completely practical. Okay, so we are going to make a note taking app using Node.js where we are going to have these features like we can have a feature of adding a note, removing a note, list all notes, and reading a note from the list of notes. And while making this application, actually, we are going to start with, first of all, what is Node.js. I'll give you a brief definition, some theory, not much. A lot of things will be practical. And then we are going to jump into the Node module system or module system, where I'm going to tell you like how to import existing Node modules like file system. Then I'll tell you how to create your own modules. And we are going to talk about some of the open source modules which were created by the community. I mean, a lot of people around the world who do a lot of coding, right? They create a lot of things, a lot of interesting things. So we are going to import some of the node modules also, which are open source or which are npm modules. We'll talk about chalk, we'll talk about yargs, and finally I'm going to give you another package, another open source package, I would say, called nodemon, which we are going to use to run our application when we do any code changes. So I think this video is going to be really exciting because you're going to get started. This is a quick start guide, crash course on Node. You're going to learn a lot of things. And at the end of the video, I mean, you will be having a production ready, I would say. I mean, we're not going to deploy it to production, but production ready note taking application, which you can use for yourself. And you can tell your friends, you can brag about it. So let's jump into Node.js. So first of all, I mean, the most important thing is what is Node.js? You must be thinking, what is Node.js? So I'm going to give you a definition which I picked from the Node.js site only. So Node.js is a JavaScript runtime built on Chrome's V8 JavaScript engine. I know you must be thinking so many technical terms. I mean, if you're a beginner or you're just getting started with Node, a lot of jargons, right? So let's focus on some of the colors which I have used here, right? So Node.js, we're talking about Node.js. It's a JavaScript runtime. Okay. Now, what is JavaScript? If you have heard of JavaScript, if you know JavaScript, then the journey of Node.js will become really, really easy for you, because it's a JavaScript runtime. Think like something related to JavaScript, something related to JavaScript runtime. And then let's focus on the second part, Chrome's V8 JavaScript engine. So think like, I'm not going to get into a lot of technical things. I'll directly jump into the this part basically. So if you remember these two terms, it's related to JavaScript. It's related to Chrome JavaScript engine. Okay, so the engine where JavaScript runs. Now you must be knowing, right? If I take the example of browser, I'll come to this. So Node.js is used to create JavaScript app on server side. Simple, plain definition. If you can remember, forget about this first line, right? If you can learn it, if you can remember it, that's okay. But you just need to remember this. Node.js is used to create JavaScript apps on server side. Now you might have heard of JavaScript, which is getting used on the client side, that is on the browser. So we create HTML pages, we decorate, or we make them beautiful using a beautiful language called CSS, and we add action or we add dynamism to our HTML pages using JavaScript. So you might have heard of JavaScript on the client side in the browser, but when we are talking about Node.js is something which runs on server side. And server is that terminal, that black terminal, right? So if you know Java, if you know PHP, or if you ever coded in a couple of these technologies, where you might have seen when we run the Java program, it runs on a terminal, right? Similarly, we are going to run our JavaScript on the server, this box. So we are taking from this box the client side. So we are taking JavaScript from the client side or the browser box to the server side box. So this is really going to be interesting. Like whatever you do in Java and PHP, we are going to do it same thing with JavaScript using Node.js. So if you know JavaScript, you will know Node.js with some information, some guidance. You will be able to quickly start coding into Node.js. So let's move on and let's start with some setup. So first of all, we need to install Node.js, and then we are going to check whether Node is installed in our application or not. And then we are going to run a very simple hello world program. The first thing into any programming language, right? We are going to run a simple hello world program using Node.js, and that too in the terminal. So first of all, let's download Node.js. I have already installed Node.js in my machine, but still I'm going to install the new version. So you just need to search Node.js in the browser. You can use any browser, like I'm using Chrome here, and you're going to get the first link which will take you to the Node.js. And now you're going to get the multiple options here. You can download the LTS version, or you can download the current version. Now clearly it is mentioned here recommended for most user. This is latest feature, so this is more of a beta version where they're experimenting or they're doing some changes. So what is the meaning of LTS here? Long-term support. So it's better to download the long-term support version. So just click on this 16.13.2 and it's going to get downloaded. I'm going to open it, and you just need to click on continue, agree, install, and I need to put my password. It's going to take some time, and once Node is installed, wow, it is installed now. And okay, I'm going to move it to bin. Now you want to check whether Node.js has been installed into your laptop, computer, machine, whatever you have. You just need to open a terminal. So I'm going to open my terminal by entering the terminal command in my Mac, and I'm going to check node-v. So this is the command which you need to run, node-v, and press enter. And voila, you see that? We have the latest version of Node, that is 16.13.2. So we have Node installed, we have Node available in our machine. Now let's start coding into JavaScript using Node. So as I said, right, so we are done with the first step. We're taking things step by step here. So we have installed the Node. We have checked the version. So previously I had this version. Now I have the latest version. Now let's create a simple hello world program which we are going to run using Node command. This is a command which we are going to use. So I'm going to create a simple. Okay, so I'll go to my Finder actually, and I have this Notes app folder created. This is where we are going to write all of our code related to Notes. But before jumping into creating the Notes app, we just need to understand and run a hello world program inside our Node.js environment, right? So I'm going to open this folder inside my Visual Studio Code. So I'll go to my Visual Studio Code. You can use any code editor. Visual Studio Code is really popular, and just go ahead and download it. So I'm going to open Notes app. And inside this Notes app, I'm going to create a new file called hello.js. And I'm going to write just a single line of code here. And you must be knowing this code if you know JavaScript. So I'm just going to say hello from Node. As simple as that. And looking at this line, you'll be saying, okay, you're writing JavaScript. Yes, I'm writing JavaScript. You see here, right? I have created hello.javascript file, and I've just written console.log, which is a JavaScript command, right? Or JavaScript function, which I'm using here. Now I'm going to run this hello node.js inside my terminal because I have a node installed and I'm going to run it. So first of all, I need to go into this folder. So this folder is nodes app, right? I'm going to open it in terminal. So new terminal tab at folder, I'm going to use this option. I got it open, right? And if I do the ls command, right, I see that hello.js. Now, if we want to run JavaScript on the browser, right? So we open that particular JavaScript file in browser, but it doesn't run directly. We use HTML, we embed JavaScript into HTML, and that runs into the browser. To run the node related file or run JavaScript on the server side, we use a node command and we use a terminal, right? So this is taking JavaScript from the browser to the terminal, right? So I have that hello.js here. So I'm going to say node hello.js. So I'm giving a command. I'm saying node, can you pick this JavaScript for me and run it on server or run it on terminal, right? So basically we're running on terminal. So I'm going to press enter and see the output, right? This is the output. This is the console.log that we have written inside our JavaScript file. So there are no major differences. We are going to write JavaScript, but in the terms of node, right? So there are some differences between how you write JavaScript in the browser and how you write JavaScript on the server or in the node environment. So basically, the common language which we are going to use is JavaScript, be it browser or be it node. But there are some minor differences because this is JavaScript on the server side, and the original JavaScript which we use with HTML, that is JavaScript on the client side. And I'm going to tell you some of the things which we can do, like, and I'll do the comparison actually. So we'll write some JavaScript code in the browser, and we are going to write some JavaScript code inside our node environment. So I'm just going to resize my window a bit. I'm going to use clear command, right? So let me open my browser on this side. So maybe I'll resize it a bit and I'll put my browser here so that we can do the comparison, right? So we are going to write JavaScript in the browser and we are going to write JavaScript on the terminal. So I'll go to my console and here you will get this window, right? So in JavaScript, say suppose you want to do the addition of 2 plus 4 maybe, right? And you can press enter. So this is the JavaScript code which is running in the browser and we are getting the output, right? Same thing we can do in the terminal. So I just need to use the node command and press enter. Now you have entered into the node world in the terminal. Now you can write the same JavaScript whatever you're writing here. So I can write 2 plus 4 here, and if I press enter, you get the same output. So it's the same JavaScript which was running on the client side. Now it's running in the terminal because of this node environment. Okay, now let's try that console.log also, which we have used previously. So I'm going to say console.log and I will say hello. I'll use the hello string. I'm getting the output as hello. I can do the same thing here. I can write console.log hello. Okay, I did a typo basically. So I'm going to say console.log hello. Let me check the spelling once again. And now if I press enter, I get the hello as an output. You see that, right? Now I can type something called a window here, and we know in browser, if you know the JavaScript, right, window is nothing but this window object, right? This entire browser window, and it's an object in JavaScript, and it has so many name value pairs, properties and methods. So window is an object with so many name value pairs. If I try the same thing here, say window, and if I press enter, I get uncaught reference error because window is not defined. Because in the world of node, in the world of terminal, we don't have something called a window. We have this window, this terminal window, but this is not the window object which we are referring when we are inside the node environment. We don't have some of the objects which are available in the browser, in the client side environment. They are not available on the server side environment or the terminal environment. Like, I'll give you the vice versa example here. So if I type something called a process, and if I press enter, I want process actually, and it's suggesting me some auto suggestions. How can I type process? Let me try once again. I'm going to escape. See that? Same uncaught reference error, window is not defined. We got similar kind of error here. Uncaught reference error, process is not defined. So this process object is not available in the browser, but if I type that process here inside my node environment, that is available. So it's JavaScript on the client side, it's JavaScript on the server side or in the terminal, but with some differences. And we are going to cover all of those differences. I'll show you some of the differences. So this is a quick comparison that I want to give. We are going to use JavaScript only, some JavaScript on client side and some JavaScript on server side. But we are going to focus on the server side JavaScript in the node environment. We are not going to focus on the client side JavaScript in this video. So this is a good quick comparison. I've given it to you, right? So let's move on. And now I'm going to close this. Probably I'll clear my terminal first of all, just I need to come out of this first, and I'll clear my terminal. And I'm going to expand my browser also. Okay, it got full screen maybe. I need to come out of that. And maybe I'll resize it. And I'll make my terminal also big. Okay, so I'll come back to my notes once again. So I think we did something step by step, right? We have installed Node, we have run the Hello World program. We did a quick comparison also between Node or JavaScript on the client side and JavaScript on this server side. I think this is a good time. Let's have a quick pause, come back, and then we will move into the Node module system where we will start building our node taking app. And I'm going to tell you how to use Node module system, how to import existing modules into our application. Welcome back. Now you know the basics of Node and we have also done with the setup. Now let's jump into the coding, right? And this is the exciting part which I am waiting for and you must be waiting for. So we are going to make the note taking app, right? So as I told you, right, this video is going to be practical. And while making this note taking app, we are going to learn some of the important concepts of Node. So one of the important concept of Node is Node module system. So there are three different ways you can create modules in Node. I mean, you can take advantage of the third-party modules, you can take advantage of the built-in modules of Node, and you can create your own modules. So we are going to understand Node module system, and this will be really exciting. We are going to create a node-taking app. Now, this app is going to be a terminal app, a command line app, because we are not going to have any user interface for it, because Node runs on server, right? And we use terminal to run the Node code. Probably I'll come up with another video where I'm going to have a user interface for this particular Node app. So let's get started. We're going to create a note taking app, and this is the requirement, right? These are 4 different features which we are going to build in this note taking app. So first one is adding a note, second one is removing a note, third one is list all notes, and the fourth one is reading a note. Okay, so let's start with the first requirement. So this is our first requirement where we need to add a note, and we're going to save this note actually into the file. So the step one is take user input. So we're going to take input from the user. So for that purpose, I'm going to use my terminal only. So if I come here, right, this is my terminal and this is my notes app. Let me check which file. Okay, so I'm in right folder, I would say. So I want to do something like this, maybe node. I'm going to run node, and then I'm going to create a file called app.js, which is like an entry file, or which is a main file for my application. And we are going to have a command, something like this, add. Okay, so if the user wants to add a node, user has to say, okay, I want to add a node. Now, user is going to pass some arguments like title for the node. So maybe a title will be first node. I'll go with a test node first, test node, and then there will be another argument which will be like body of a node. So this is my test node, something like this. So when user is going to press enter, we are going to take this command, this add command. We are going to take these two arguments. The first one is title and the second one is body. And we are going to take this argument and we are going to save it into a file. So a lot of fun we are going to do. So let's get started. So I'm going to remove this. Now to create all these commands, right? I'm going to use a third-party npm module called Yargs. So we are going to create an app.js file where I'm going to import the Yargs module, because we are not going to write the code by ourselves, right? To create all those commands or create the command API and all those things. We're going to use Yargs, which is a third-party npm module. Okay, so let's start with first creating the app.js file, which I have. So we have this hello.js file, which we have created in the Notes app. So I have this folder open inside my code editor, Visual Studio Code, and you see this hello.js file where we have written this console.log. So I'm going to rename this file to something called playground.js. So we are going to use this file maybe, just to play around with some of the node features, right? So I'm going to keep it like this only. And inside my notes app, now I'm going to create a file called app.js. So this is my main entry file for my application. And here, actually, first of all, before I talk about Yargs, we have a built-in feature inside node itself, which we can use to pass the arguments from the user. And I want to tell you that actually. So let's do that. So that argument is nothing but something called process. So I'm going to log that argument. So it's process dot, the name of that is argv. Okay, so let's try to see what it's going to print. Process.argv. So I'm going to go to my terminal now. I'm already inside my Nodes app and you see this app.js, right? So I'll say node app.js and I'm going to pass some arguments to it. Like maybe I'll just pass test node, something like this. Okay. And let's see what happens. See that? We're getting the arguments. That test node I'm getting here. And maybe I'll go more specific, like how we want to do actually. So node.js, I want to use something called add command and I'm going to pass the title. So I'll start with title only, test node, something like this. And if I press enter, you see that I'm getting the add, I'm getting title and test and note, that space. I mean, I can get the argument using the built-in feature of node called process. This is an object which I can use to get the arguments from the terminal. But this is not the handy way, or this is not a easy way of getting the arguments. That's why, we are going to use something called Yargs. And Yargs is nothing but a third-party node module. And if you want to use any module, right, any third-party module, you just need to type npm modules here in your Google search, and you can go to npm JS, which is like a repository of different third-party modules which different people have posted here. I mean, there are a lot of coders around the world, right? They write a lot of code and they can post their packages, their npm packages. So it's like custom code, existing code written by someone else, which we are trying to use here. So I'm going to search here Yargs, and you can also publish your code here actually. And you see here, right? This is Yargs. I'm going to click on it. We're going to use Yargs. And if you see here, right, this is more of a, you see 60 million almost download. So this is quite popular node module, I would say. Now how to install it, right? So to install this node module, this Yargs, we're going to use something called npm, right? Npm install. So let's do that. I'll go to my terminal and I'm going to say npm install Yargs. This is a simple command that you need to write to install any third-party node module. I'm going to press enter and this is going to install Yargs module, and you will see some differences inside your nodes app folder. Now you see this node modules folder, right? And we got Yargs. So this is the code of Yarg. The entire code is written inside this build lib, and a lot of JavaScript code you'll be able to find this index dot. So there are different files here, so maybe somewhere you'll be able to see that code. Okay, so this is node module, and now I'm going to use this Yargs. I want to bring in Yargs into my project, right, into my nodes app. And how can we bring that? If you want to import any third-party code into your own code, like in case of in this case, right, in the app.js, we use something called, first of all, I'm going to create, okay, so I think let's start with that. We use something called require. So this is a function which we use to import any third-party module, and I'm just going to type Yargs. So this is going to bring the Yargs code into my app.js, which I can store into a variable called Yargs. There you go. It's really simple. I mean, now we have Yargs imported, right? We have this Yargs object available inside my app.js. And now you need to understand the Yargs API. So the good idea, to learn about any third-party module, you can just search for that particular npm module, right? And you're going to get the help about it. So probably I'm going to click on this one, yargs.org. And you need to basically understand or learn. So I did this step, right? I have installed Yargs, and then you need to understand this code, right? So you can create different commands using Yargs. So you need to go through the document of that particular module so that you can use it the way you want, right? So we are going to use Yargs. So Yargs is basically, if you want to see the definition of Yargs, so I'm going to just enter Yargs again, and if I see somewhere like explore, dependencies, readme, or maybe I will click here and we can go to the repository, right? This is the Yargs repository. So Yargs help build interactive command line tools by passing arguments and generating an elegant user interface. So terminal interface we are creating, right? So it will help us create those commands. So we need all of these commands, right, which we need to create for our requirement, like adding a node or removing a node or listing all the nodes, right? So the first command we are creating is add. So let's create that command. So I'll go back to my code editor and I'm going to say yargs.command. It's really simple. So this is a function. Yargs.command is a function which takes something called a configuration object, which again you need to understand from the documentation. So just follow along with me and you will understand what I'm typing here. So we need to write command. So first command which we are going to create is add command for the user, right? So user is going to say, okay, I want to add a node. So we are telling user, okay, you use the add command, and we will describe what this command actually does. So this is like a help for the user that add a new node. I'm just going to say this command is used for adding a new node, right? Then we are going to build the arguments for this command. So we use a builder object for creating those arguments. And this object is again a collection of object where I'm going to create, first there will be a title property, and this title will be the title argument, right? So I'm going to describe this title argument. So I'll say this is note title. Okay, so we use Yargs command, the name of the command, the description of the command, and builder we use for the argument. So for now, I'm starting with just argument, one argument, that is title argument, and we are going to expand this builder part, right? And I'm going to take the argument from the user. Okay, but how I'm going to handle those arguments, right? So once the user is going to say add and user is going to give that title, right? I need a way to handle that command. I need to process the arguments from the user. To process the arguments, we use something called a handler function, and this handler function gets the arguments or argument variable, whatever I can say. So those argument I'm going to capture inside this handler function, and let's go ahead with a simple console.log for now, and we're going to see what arguments we are getting. So now I'm going to run this app.js into my terminal. So I'll say node app, you can write app.js or you can just say app. And now I'm going to say, first of all, you need to write a command, the name of the command. Okay. And then I'm going to pass the arguments, and there is special way of passing argument. We use that dash dash syntax, right? So dash dash title, and maybe I'll go with test note as a title. Now if I press enter, you don't see anything happening, right? So there is one special thing that we need to do. And I know, I mean, I also got, goofed up. I mean, why it is not working, why the Yargs is not working. So there is one important step which you shouldn't forget. You need to say Yargs dot pass. So this function actually initiate that passing of the argument in your terminal. So again, I'm going to run the same command, and now this time if I enter, see that we're getting the command, so we're getting the title, right? Test, and somehow, I'm not getting the command, probably add note. So probably it's adding two different command here. So let me try this. Maybe I'll put this something like this. See that I'm getting the add as my command and title as my argument. So I'm getting that name value pair here. And when we were using that process.argv, right, that was adding some new things into our array. But this is more of an easy syntax and more of an easy way to create the commands, right? You can also try this node app and dash dash. If you write help, it shows the different commands which are available to the user. So we have this app has an add command, right, which we can use for adding a new node. So this help dash dash help I'm using here. So I'm going to clear my console. Now we're getting the nodes, right? I'm getting the title. Let's add another property called body, because our nodes are going to have a body also. And I'm going to describe this. I'll say this is note text. So this is more of a note text or note body, right? I'm going to say, so maybe we can write something like this, note body or text. So now my add command is going to have two different arguments, that is title and body. I'm going to collect that here. So let's print that. So maybe let's go back to our terminal again. Let's run the command node app and then add command. And this time I'm going to give two different arguments. I'll go with test, and for body, I'm going to say something. Okay. I'm going to press enter. I'm getting the command as add. You see here, right? Test something. So I'm getting the title. I'm getting the body also. So this is cool. Now I'll come back to my notes again. And if I come back here, right? So we are getting the user from the input. Now we can process this input from the user. What if, there is a possibility, right? My user might not pass the body, or maybe user will pass the empty title, right? So we need to handle that. See here, right? We're getting title as true. So that handling part, if user is not passing the title, if it is not a string, right? We need to handle that part also. So maybe I'll check for something like this. So first of all, I'm going to process those arguments. So I'll create two different variables here. So I'll say const title is equals to argv dot title, and I'll create another const that will be my body, notes body, I would say, argv dot body. See that? I'm going to do some processing, some handling, right? So I'm going to check if, so we'll use this type of function, type of title is equals to string, right? If it is string, then only we are going to process this, right? And we are going to check for, so let me first of all, try to console.log this one, whether I'm using the right syntax or not. So if I paste here, right, type of title equals to string, let's try this. So I will enter this, it is coming as a false. Now if I enter something, it's coming as true, right? So this is basically validation of my input. So I'm going to put same thing for my body also here. So type of body is equals to string. So for both the title, so this is some kind of handling I'm doing. Later on, we are going to use this builder only to do the validation. So for now, I'm just putting some validation here. And now, if my validation are passed through, right, now I'm getting the right inputs. So we are, or I'll say in case of valid input, right? So we are getting the valid input. We're going to process that input, and that is our step 3, that is saving the node to the file. And for that purpose, I'm going to use the node built-in module. Now you can use the third-party module also, like Yargs is for creating the commands and passing the command line argument. Similarly, for writing something to the file, right? There might be npm modules available. You can go and search on the npm.js site, but Node has already have something built in that you don't need to install. It's a built-in library. That this file system is a built-in library inside a Node only. So we'll see how we can import the built-in modules of Node in our app.js file. And it's pretty simple. I can tell you, right? You just need to say require. Same function we use, require, and you just need to say fs. Now we haven't installed this fs, right? I haven't used npm install command to install the fs module. This is built-in module of Node. That's why we don't need to install it, right? So once we install something, it goes into something called a package.json file. You see here, right? This is a dependency which is added in the package.json file, but you don't see fs here, right? You see Yargs. So any third-party dependencies you'll be able to see inside the package.json file, but not in case of the internal modules or Node's own modules or built-in modules. So I'm going to say fs. I'm going to collect that object, that file system object. Now we're going to use this file system to add Node. So we're going to create a JSON file. So we're going to save all the nodes into the JSON file. I would have used text files also, but I'm using JSON because JSON is easy to parse, or create objects out of it. We are going to create some JavaScript objects out of it. So let's do that. Let's follow our third step, that is save a node to the file. So to save a node into the file, it's really simple. We are going to use this file system module. So I'm going to first of all, create one object called a note object. So I'm going to say note, and I'll create an object where my note is going to have a title, and that title will be title. I'm getting this title from here. Okay. And my note is going to have a body, which is again, I'm going to use the body, this local variable here. And now I'm going to save my node using something called fs dot, and there is a function called write file sync. This is a function, ready-made function available to me for creating a file, and it takes two different arguments. The first one is the name of the file. So I'm going to save it into notes.json or JSON. And the second argument is the data, that string I want to pass. So it's asking for a string, and this note is actually an object, right? So I'm going to use something called json.parse, or stringify, sorry, not parse, stringify. And I'm going to convert this node, this JavaScript object, into a JSON string using json.stringify function. So you'll see the magic happening, right? So such a simple two-line code, which so we are collecting the node from the user using a Yargs package, right? And then we are saving the node, right? We are trying to save that node using the file system module, built-in module of a node. Now let's go back to our terminal, and this time, I'm going to bring my terminal here because I want to show you something which is going to happen here inside this folder structure. So I'm going to say node app, and we are going to use the add command, okay? And I'm going to say title. Now it's not showing basically, so let me come back here. I want to show you the command first. So title is equal to I'm going to say test only, and for body I'm going to say something. I'm just going with some random words, okay? Something, right? Now I'm going to, before I press enter, I'm going to go here, and you see here, right? Nothing is there. Now I'm going to press enter, and you see that notes.json file. So we have finally, saved our note into a JSON file. Isn't this amazing? I mean, I'm feeling really happy, excited that we are able to achieve our first requirement, right? Adding a node. So we took the input from the user, we have processed that user input, did some validation, we have used Yargs here, and then finally we have used the built-in module, FS, that we brought into our app.js, and we have saved our node into a nodes.json file. Now, before maybe I'll take a pause here, but before I do that, let's see the third way of importing a file, that is your own module, how to create your own module and how to bring those modules into your app.js file. So let's quickly try to do that. So Yargs is a third-party module, file system is a built-in module, but how can I create my own module? And to do that, we need to follow really simple steps. So I'm going to create a new file here called notes.js. It's all about JavaScript, right? So inside this node, this fs, whatever we have imported here, right? Or this Yargs, this is nothing but JavaScript. This fs is also JavaScript. So I have created notes.js, and this JavaScript file is actually going to have all those functions, right? So the first function I need to create is like an add function, which is going to help me adding a note to the file. Okay, and it's going to take two different inputs. So first one will be title, and second one will be the body. And I'm going to use this add function to actually write this title and body into the file. Okay, so let's do that. Now, if I want to use this add function, right? So I need to export it so that I can use it inside my app.js. So notes I have created, this is my own JavaScript file. Now I want to bring in this note inside my app.js. How can I do that? To do that, I need to use something called module.exports, and I'm going to export my add function. Okay, and we'll go step by step. I'm just going to say console.log title, and I'm going to say body, and then so we'll just test our add function whether it is working or not. To do that, now to bring in this add function inside my app.js, we need to import that, right? And there is a different way of importing our own module. So we say something called require, and this time whenever you want to import your own module, you basically use this syntax ./nodes. So this is my JavaScript file nodes, right, where I have my add function which I'm exporting here. And it's going to, so what I'm exporting this add function. So this nodes is actually going to import that add function only. So I'm going to say add, and that's how I'm going to get that function from this nodes.js file. Really simple, right? So now you know how to import modules from third-party modules, objects, built-in modules, and this is your own function, add function, which you are getting from the nodes.js file. How it helps, because you're not going to write all of your functionality into one file, into one app.js file. You need to separate your functionality into small chunks, small modules, right? So this nodes is responsible for adding a node. Then I'm going to have a function for deleting a node, maybe, or getting a node or listing a node, something like that. So that's why, I have created my custom module called nodes. So let's see how we can use this add function now. So obviously, I'm going to call this add function. I'm going to comment this function, everything here for now. And I'm just going to call the add function here. So I'll say add, and I'll pass the arguments to add. So the first argument is title and second one is body, right? And let's see if it is working. Now if I go back and if I run the same command here, it's not going to save anything to the file, but it's going to call the add function inside my, you see that? Test something. It's calling the add function which is written inside my nodes.js file. Now I'm going to bring this code. I'm going to take this code from here and I'll give this responsibility to my nodes.js file, right? So I'm going to just paste this code here. I'll remove the comments. So we are creating a node and we are saving that node inside our nodes.json file, but that is inside my own module, right? Which I have created, nodes.js. Now I need to import the fs here. So I'm going to remove that part from here because we don't need fs here. Now I'm going to just cut it from here. This one I am going to save and I'll import this fs here inside this file. So now we have file system, which is built-in module of a node. We have created our own nodes.js file. We are using the write file sync function to create the node. Let's test this functionality. So we have our add.js and I'm calling the add API, I would say, or add function of my own module, the nodes module, right? I'm passing the title and the body, and which is getting used here, and it's saving into the file. So we already have a file, but I'm going to run and I'm going to add a new node here. Maybe I'll change the body to something else, something like this. Okay, I'm going to press enter and let's go back to our terminal and let's check the nodes.json file. See that? I'm getting the new node added, but through my own module, right? Node.js. Okay, cool. So I think we have covered a lot in this part of the video, right? We have first of all, we started with app.js file. We have seen how to use third-party modules, like we have used Yargs for creating commands for the user, terminal commands for the user. We have used a file system module, which is a built-in module. We have imported into app.js. We have seen like how to save the file. And finally, we have moved that all of saving part, right? That's step number 3 of our requirement, to our own module, which we have created called nodes.save. So you have seen like how to create your own modules also. So I think this is a good time to have a quick break, take a pause, and go for a walk, think through it, think of the ways we have imported different modules in our app.js, and then how we have created our own modules also to have a very good code structure, separation of concern about our different functionalities. Quick pause, come back, and we'll continue building our note-taking app. Welcome back. In this part of the video, we're going to do some improvement in our first requirement, right? Adding a note. So if I go back to my app.js, right? And you see, right, we have written a command here and we're doing some checks, right? I'm checking whether the type of my title is string or type of my body argument, which I'm passing, right, is a string. But actually, we don't need to do this. There is a feature in command function itself. I'm talking about the yargs.command here. So we have written a command, add command, then have a describe property which describe my command. Similarly, we have a builder, right, for adding the properties. So there are a couple of properties which I would like to tell you which are pretty important. The first one is a demand option. So we can use something called demand option. Now this name is really confusing, I would say. The meaning of demand option is nothing but it's required. Whether you want to make this particular argument required or not, that's the role of demand option. They would have named this property required. They would have kept it simple, right? Demand option. So by saying demand option as true, I'm saying this property is required. The second attribute is type. So by saying type as a string, now I can avoid this check here, right? The check which I was doing here inside my, not this one probably, here. Actually, here I'm checking, right? If the type of title is string and body is string, that's what I can avoid using the type property. So always it's going to ask for the string type of the argument to be string. So these two properties, they're really simple. I'm going to put them here also because I need to have my body also as a required argument. So that's why I've said demand option as true and type as a string. So now I can happily remove this code because I don't need to do this check here and this line. Something went wrong, maybe. I can remove this line also. And let's do some formatting. And I'm going to remove this argv title and argv body also because I'm going to directly use that here. So I'm just going to say argv.title and argv.body. Just a bit of refactoring we are going to do in this part of the video, right? So now I'm getting the argument and now I have made those argument as required, as well as I'm handling that validation inside my command configuration only. So let's go back and run the application again. So now I'm going to add a new note, I would say. So testing 1, something like this. And now if I press enter, and now if I go back, I would be able to see that note which is coming here. But I wanted to show you, right? If I don't pass the argument, right? So maybe I'll just say node app add. I'm just using the command. If I do that, you see here, I'm getting the warning message, missing required arguments title body. Now say suppose I pass the title, but I don't pass the body argument. Let's see what happens. In that case also it's failing because I haven't passed the argument body. So now because I have made both the arguments here, demand option as true, we have to pass both the arguments to make our program work. Pretty easy and a really good option, I would say, that the command yargs.command function has provided to us. Now I'll go back to my add function, right? And we need to do some refactoring and some modification, some improvement in our add function also. So right now in my notes, if you see in the notes.json, I can add only one note at a time, right? So now if I go back and if I add a new note, right? Say I'm going to use string for now. This is my node 2, right? I'm adding and it's going to replace the existing node. But we don't want to do that, right? We want to add nodes. We should have this nodes as an array, right? Something like this. So I'm going to change it to array, something like this. So whenever I'm going to add a new node, it should keep the existing one and append the new node probably at the end or at the start of this array. So I've changed this to array because nodes, we're going to have nodes as an array. This JSON also going to have array of nodes so that it will contain the list of nodes. Now let's do those improvement inside our add function. So to do that, first of all, I need to grab the existing nodes. So let's do it step by step. I'm going to grab my existing nodes. For that, I'm going to load the existing nodes from the nodes.json file. And then I'm going to append the new node into it. And then I'm going to again write it back into my nodes.json files. For that, I'm going to create a function and I'm going to call it read nodes, which is going to return me all the nodes in the existing nodes.json file. So for that, I'm going to, obviously I'm going to read the nodes from the file. So I'll create a const, probably I'll write const nodes string. Okay, so this is going to be nodes string that I'm going to get back. So I'm going to say fs.read file saying this is a function I'm going to use, and I'll pass my file name here, nodes.json. And now if I do console.log, I just wanted to show you what read file sync is going to return me. So this is node. So basically it's going to return me node buffer actually. I'm going to change the name from nodes string to node buffer. It's not going to return me the actual string. I'll show you. It's going to return me the buffer object. So I'll save and we're going to call that function here. I'll say no read nodes. I'm just going to call that function for now. And now if I go back and try to add the node again, see that? I'm getting that buffer, buffer object, not the actual node string. So to convert this buffer object into string, we use a toString function. And now if I save and if I go back again and run the application, see that? Now I'm getting the string, the actual node string. Now I'm going to convert this node string into an object because it's going to return me a JSON string. I'm going to convert that JSON string into JavaScript object. In our case, it will be a node, but actually JavaScript. So let's return that from this function. So I'm going to use return and I'll say I'm going to take this. So I'm going to write it once again. Okay. I'm going to say JSON. I'm going to return JSON dot. So there is a method called pass. So stringify, this method we use to convert JavaScript object to JSON string. If we want to do the reverse of it, we can use a pass function which is going to take string as an input. So nodes buffer dot string to string, which will take string as an input and it's going to convert that string into a JavaScript object. And that's what we are going to grab it here. So I'm going to say let nodes is equals to read nodes. So this is going to contain that object, that nodes object, right, which I have created here. So I'll convert this into an array again because we have overwritten it. So now it's going to return me back that array and we are going to do the console.log here once again just to see whether we are getting the array or not. So console.log nodes, and now again I'm going to try to write a new node. Maybe I'll write a node 3 this time. Enter. See that? I'm getting the node 3 is not actually added, so I'm getting test and body node to existing node, and that is an array, right? Now I'm going to create the new node, right? So we are already creating a new node, but I like writing code, in a beautiful way so that it's more readable. So I know, I should have, I can create the node like this, but I'm going to create a function for that. I mean, this looks like more of a clean code, right? So I'll create a function called create node, which is going to take type and body. I think title, not type. Title and body as an argument. And it's going to return me this object. See, you can do this here also, but I like to write clean code, meaningful code. So this function is responsible for creating node with 2 different arguments. So now I'm going to say call the create node here, and I'll pass the title and body as an argument. So this is going to return me a new node. So now I have the nodes array which contains my existing nodes, and I've created a new node also. Now I'm going to write it into my file, But before writing, I need to put it into my nodes array, right? So let's do that. So I'm going to say nodes dot, I'm going to use unshift function of array. Now, why I'm using unshift function of array? Because I want to append my new nodes at the start of an array. So if I use a push function, right? So there is a push function in array, which is going to push the new element at the end of the array, right? But I don't want to do that. I want to add a new node at the start of the array, at the 0th index. And to do that, we use something called unshift function. And I'm going to add a new node here. Not here, actually here, which I have created, right? So now we have a new nodes array. Let's do a console.log again. So console.log, and let's see what we are getting in the nodes array. So for the time being, I'm going to comment this code for writing into the file. And let's say what we have in the existing file. So we have test and node 3. Now I'm going to add a node 4 here and press enter. And we got the error, right? Nice. Nodes.unshift is not a function. Okay. Let me go back and see why nodes.unshift is not a function. So read nodes is going to return me json.parse nodes buffer.string, right? So because I don't have this as an array, it's returning an object. So I'm going to save and I'll go back to my program again. I'll just write clear. Let's run the program again. Let's do it. See that? Beautiful, right? I'm added a node 4 and that too at the 0th index at the start of my node, right? And the existing node remains in the array. So I'm not replacing the existing file or existing nodes file. I'm adding a new node and keeping the state of my nodes array intact, right? So this is working fine. Now let's do the writing. So instead of writing here again, I'm going to write one function, which is the responsibility of this function is only to write a node. So I would say write nodes actually, and we will pass this data, nodes data, to our write nodes function. And I'm going to take this function from here and I'll put it here. I'm going to remove this part. So I'm passing the data, right, which we are going to write inside. And first of all, we need to convert that object, right, that nodes object into a string. So this looks beautiful. Now I'm going to call that function write nodes and I'll pass my nodes array. That's the data which I want to write into my nodes.json file. Let's give it a try and let's see how our program is working. So I'll say I'm going to add a node 5 this time, and if I press enter, I don't see anything here because I have removed that console.log. But if I come back to my nodes.json, see that? I got my node 5 added and I have my existing node present there, right? I have node 3, I have node 5. Let's try to add one more node basically. So just to test our program. So I'm going to add node 6 this time. And now if I come back, I see 6, I see 5, and I see node number 3. This is exciting. I mean, we did a lot of good things in this part of the video, right? We have refactored some of the code inside our ad. We have made it more readable, right, by writing these small functions. So this is looking good. I think our ad functionality is looking pretty fine, right? Let's move on. And basically, we are going to take a quick pause here. I would suggest to take a quick pause, come back, and we will talk about the next requirement of our notes app. And we are going to build that requirement in the next part of the video. Welcome back. Now let's focus on the requirement number 2 of our video. I mean, so let's go with the requirement number two, that is removing a node, right? So again, we are going to take the input from the user, and we'll process that input from the user, and we are going to remove the node from the file. So this is more like, removing one node at a time from a file. So I'll switch back to my Visual Studio. Okay, so we are going to add a new command here. So we already have a command, right? Add command. So I'm just going to copy this from here till here, and I'm going to just copy and paste. I would have written this, but just to save time, I'm going to say remove. So this is the new command I'm creating basically. So whenever you want to add new commands using Yargs, you just need to add a command, right? You just need to use this function command. So the new command which we are creating is a remove command, which is going to remove a node, right? So just going to say remove a node. This is the description of this particular command, and this time we just need to pass the title. We don't need to pass the body. So there will be only one argument that is needed called title, and I've described this as no title, this is required, and type should be string. And here we are going to call a function called remove, and we just need to pass a title from the argument. So now let's write this function inside our nodes.js, our own module, right? So I'm going to create a new function here, const remove, which is going to take title as an input. So I'm just passing one argument. That's why I'm not using round brackets around my title here. And I'm going to change it to const because I'm not changing it anywhere. So this will be nodes. So again, I'm going to copy this line because first of all, we need to grab all the nodes from our file, right? Our nodes.json file. So first of all, we need to grab all the nodes inside my remove function, and then I'm going to remove that node using something called a filter function. So I'm going to loop through these nodes. I'm going to compare the title, and I'm going to remove only those nodes which are not going to have this title. So let's write that. So I'm going to create new nodes variable, and I'm going to filter through nodes dot. I'm going to use filter function, and filter function takes another function as an argument where I'm going to get each individual node, and I'm going to compare that node dot title is not equals to title, because I don't want to return that node which already exists, right? That's what I want to remove from here. So this simple one line of code, using arrow functions, I can remove the node from my nodes array. So let's do a console.log. So I'm going to say new nodes. Let's do a log first. Let's do some testing. So I'm going to remove all the nodes from my file. Actually, I'm going to add some new nodes from scratch, and then we will do the testing of this functionality, this remove nodes. I'll go back to my terminal. The app is already running. I'm going to say node app, and first of all, let's add some nodes. So first one will be title node 1 dash dash body. I'm just going to use the same name, node 1. This would have added a node inside my nodes.json. Yes. Let's add one more. This will be 2. Let's add one more. This will be 3. Okay, so let's come back to our nodes, and I see 3 different nodes added here. Now let's try to remove some nodes, right? And just to do the testing, right? So I'm going to use node remove command, and sorry, I need to pass the app also. Node app remove. I'm just going to pass the title. So which node you want to remove? Let's try with node 3 first. Node 3 will be at the top actually. Let's try to remove the node 1. Enter, and remove is not a function, right? Because I have written it, right? I have written the remove function here. I'm calling the remove function here, but I haven't imported that function here, right? Like we have imported add function here. And there's one more problem which I want to explain here, right? So I'm using module.exports and I'm just exporting one function, that is add function here. But if I want to export multiple functions, right? Either I can export add or remove function here. So I'm going to convert this export into an object so that I can export multiple things. I can export add function, I can export the remove function. So now I'm exporting an object. So I need to come back to my app.js, which is consumer for nodes.js file. This is my own module, right? So instead of add, I'm going to get back nodes here. And then I can replace add with nodes.add, and I can replace remove with nodes.remove. Now we will save. Let's do the clear. And now I'm trying to remove the first node. See that? We got node 3 and node 2 back, right? Because node 1 has been removed. Let's try to remove the another one. Maybe let this time node 3. See that? So basically we are not changing the file here. That's why I'm getting node 2 and node 2 and node 1 and node 1. Now let's write into the file. And for that purpose, I've already created a function called write nodes. I'm just going to pass my data and it's automatically going to save it to nodes.js file. So I'm going to take this nodes and write it to my file. So write nodes, and I'm just going to pass new nodes object. Simple, right? I'm going to save. And if I come back to my file, right, I have 3 different nodes here. Let's try to remove some nodes now, and it is going to remove from the file. So let's start with node 1 probably, or let's try with 2, enter. If I go back to my file now, see that? I got node 3 and node 1 only. Let's try to remove node 1 or node 3 probably. If I come back, see that I got only node 1. Let's try to remove the node 1 also. And I got an empty array here. So it's pretty easy, right, to remove a node. I just created a remove function here, and because of this reusability, this clean code, writing clean code, I'm reading the nodes, and that's written inside one function. I just need to grab my nodes from the file, do some filter activities, and finally I've written a function for writing the nodes also. So I'm not going to copy and paste all of this code here. So if I need to do any changes, right, I can do it here. This is the beauty of writing such a clean code, dividing your functionality or code into small functions. I think that helps in the long run. So I think we are done with the requirement number 2, which is removing a node. And I would suggest to take a quick pause here, come back, and we will work on the third requirement, that is called list all nodes. Welcome back. Now let's focus on our third requirement, that is list all nodes, and that should be pretty easy requirement. So we're going to take the input from the user, that will be our list command. We're going to process that input, right? So we're going to read that command using Yargs, and we're going to list all the nodes from the file. So let's jump into the coding. So I'll go back to my code editor, and I'm going to add a new function called const list. I'm just going to say list only, and I don't need any argument in this case. So that will be an empty array because I want to show all the nodes, right? And that would be pretty easy, I would say. I'm just going to read my nodes. First of all, right, so I need to read my nodes, and I'm just going to do the console.log of all of those nodes. And for the time being, I'm doing the console.log, but in the other part of the video which I'm going to create, I'm going to use something called chalk for doing the logging. So right now, let's do this. I'm just going to log the nodes here. Pretty easy, right? That's why, creating such beautiful small functions. So I'm just going to read the nodes. I'm just going to say console.log. Now let's use this list command. For that, I'm going to copy my yargs.command, and I'm going to say list will be the another command. So list, I'll say list all nodes, list all nodes, and we don't need any arguments. So I'm just going to remove the entire build builder part here, and there will be no argument. So I don't need, I need the handler, but I'm not going to get back any arguments. I'm just going to call notes.list without any argument. Now I'm going to save and let's test the functionality, but I don't have notes in my file. I just realized. So let's first add some notes. Let's do the clear. Let's use the add command. It must be in somewhere in the memory. Okay, I got it. One. Let's add note. Two. Let's add note. Three also. So we have three different notes now. If I go back to my file, right, I'm going to list them. So I'm going to use the, let's first clear. So node app list. Wow, list is not defined because I haven't exported it from the notes.js files. I'm just going to export it. List, and let me check in app.js how I'm calling the list. Okay, it should work now. So let's clear the console and use the list command. See that? It's pretty easy, right? I mean, getting all the nodes because we already have functions in place. So that was pretty quick. Let's go back to our code editor again, or maybe I'll go back to my notes and let's tackle the last requirement. That is reading a node, reading a single node. So I'm going to take the input from the user, and this input is nothing but going to be a title of the node. And then we are going to process the input, and then we are going to read a node from the file. So let's do that quickly. I think that should be easy. So first of all, I'm going to create a command this time, and we need this command actually. So I'm going to take this one from here because we need to pass title, right? We don't need body actually. So I'm going to grab this one, copy, paste. This one will be, so what's the name of my command would be? So I'm reading a node, right? So it will be read a node. So I'll say read a node. Node title, I'm going to pass node title only, and that will be required argument. I'm going to get the argument. So I'm going to call a read function and passing the title as an argument. So let's write our read function. That should be quick actually. So I'm going to say const read, and we are going to get the title. And again, I'm going to use a function basically. So I'm going to use, probably we can use filter function also. It's going to return just one single note, right? So let's do that because reading a note is going to return just one note. So I'm going to use filter only. So let's first of all grab the notes. So I'll grab the notes, and then I'm going to say note is equals to, I'll go with filter my notes, basically notes dot filter function I'm going to use, and I'll say it's going to grab the note arrow function. So I'm going to check whether note dot title, this time I'm going to check if note dot title is equals to title. That's going to return me that single note which I'm going to log. It's going to return me an array actually. So I'm just going to say console dot log that note would be first item in the node. Anyways, I'm going to get one node only. So that's what I'm trying to do here. But there are some issues with our problem. I'm going to tackle all of those problems in the last part of the video. So let's go in the flow, right? And let's write the code, let's write the wrong code first and we can make it correct anyways, anytime, right? So we will do it in the last part of the video. So I think the read part is ready. Let's try to read something from the nodes. So first of all, I'm going to list nodes and let me see how many nodes I have. I have three different nodes. I'm going to say node app. This time I'm going to say read, and I want to read a note with a title of note 3. Notes.read is not a function because again I forgot to export my function. So let's do that. Console clear, And first of all, I'm going to list again, node app list. We have some beautiful commands created now. Node app. This time I'm going to use read, and let's read the node of title as 3. See that? We are getting that note back, right? Let's try with some other command, maybe 1 this time. Let's try with 2. Pretty easy, right? I mean, once you have the high level structure, I mean, the functions, the beautiful functions in place, right? Handling other requirements become a cakewalk, becomes really easy, right? We have the nodes file, we have nodes, and we have all the APIs, I mean, nodes APIs ready. So we worked through 4 different requirements, right? We started with the requirement number 1 where we have added a node, and there is a problem, right? We can add a duplicate node also inside our nodes.json file. So I'm going to handle that in the last part of the video. Then we have handled three more requirements, right? First is removing a node, list all nodes, and reading a node. So let's take a quick pause here, and in the last part of the video we are going to correct some of the problems in our code, right? And I'm going to use a very beautiful logging library called, or logging npm module called chalk. So we are going to replace our console.logs using a chalk npm library. Welcome back. Now let's continue, and this is the final part of the video where we are going to do some of the improvements in our nodes own module which we have created, right? So there are some. So initially, I mean, I take this approach, you just go ahead and write down the code the way you want, right? So we have created better APIs, I would say here, right? We have created nodes API where we have add function, we have remove function, we have list function, we have read function. These are all the different features we have implemented for our notes app, right? Now, when I'm adding a note, we don't have any validation, right? We don't have any error handling code written here, right? So say suppose I go back to my terminal, and right now if I show you, if I list all the notes, right? So let's try that. So I'm going to list all of my nodes. So we have a list command to list down all the nodes, right? So I have node 1, node 2, node 3. Now say suppose I want to add a new node. So it might be existing command. Let me try to search. Okay, so I'm adding a new node. So I'm adding a duplicate node, right? I'm adding node 3, which already exists here, right? And if I say enter, you see that? And even, I'm not showing any messages, right? So user will not know whether the node has been added or not. User has to run node app and then list command, right? Then only he or she will be able to see the nodes, right? We're not showing any logs also. So that's what we are going to do in this part of the video. First of all, we are going to handle this duplicate condition where I'm adding duplicate nodes. Let's handle that, and we will show some logs, and we'll show logs in a beautiful way. I mean, there is nothing like CSS in node.js, but there is a library called chalk which we are going to use to show all those error messages. Okay, so let's jump into the coding, and I'm going to remove that duplicate node first. So I've added node 3 twice, right? So maybe I'm going to remove it first. From here, from a file, I can do the file modification directly. And before adding a function, right? I mean, before adding any node, I'm going to check for the duplicates, right? So I'm going to write a function called const check duplicate node, something like this. And I'm going to pass nodes and node, both the parameters. And this function is going to loop through these nodes, and it's going to find duplicate. So I'm going to use nodes dot for each. If you heard of for each function, right? We can loop through an array, and it's going to take the handler function. This is a function, right? Function as an argument where I'm going to get each individual node, and here I'm going to do the comparison. So if nodes, so if n dot title is equals to node dot title. So if it is same, right, we will return true. That means the node already exists. True means the node already exists. So I'm looping through the nodes array. I'm going to get each individual node and I'm doing the comparison here, right? If the title of this node, which I'm getting from the nodes array, is equals to the title of the new node which I'm creating, right? This I'm going to pass as an argument. And if they're matching, right, I'm saying, okay, it's a duplicate node. Otherwise, if there are no duplicates, I'm going to return false. See that? Pretty easy, right? Now I'm going to check this function before adding a node. So I'm going to get the nodes from my file, and I'm going to create a node. But before adding a node and before writing it to file, I'm going to check if is it a duplicate node, right? So I'm going to call check duplicate node function, and I'm going to pass nodes and node for the arguments. So if it returns true, right, that means I have a duplicate node and I have a typo in my function. So I'm going to correct that, check duplicate node. Okay. So if it returns true, that means it's a duplicate node. So I don't want to add it, right? So that will go into the else part. But I'm going to change it. I'm going to negate my condition here. So if it's not duplicate, I'm going to add a node. Else, I'll just do a console.log and I'll say node already added, something like this. See. So right now I'm doing the console.log, but we are going to use chalk library to make our log messages beautiful, right? So let's check this part whether I'm able to add duplicate node or not now. So I'll go back. First of all, I'm going to run node app and I'm going to list all of my nodes. See that? So I have 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to add a node. Add, and this time I'm going to add node 3. But I'm not getting the console.log. That means something strange has happened. That means node has been added. So I'm going to list again. I can see the duplicate node has been added. So what's the problem with my code? I need to check that. If not check duplicate node, if it is true, it is going to become false because node 3 already exists there. So I'm checking n.title is equals to node.title and this n nodes. I'm looping through, I'm passing this node also here. I'm checking for the condition. Okay, so I think I need to do some debugging here. So I'm going to do some console.log here just to check why it's adding the node n.title and the node which I'm passing, that's node.title. I'm going to check both of them. Let's see why it's getting added. So I think it's already added. So I'm going to remove it. Save. So node 3. So I'll go back, check duplicate. I'm calling check duplicate. If check duplicate returns true, is equals to node.title. That means it exists. If it exists, it becomes false. It should log this, but it's not doing that. So let me first try the list command. Then I'll try the add command. So this time I'm adding node 3. Title is node 3, body is node 3. Let's see. So I'm getting node 3, right? So this is equal. So it should return true. But why it went into the loop, right? I don't know. Maybe this check duplicate node function, I'm using this for each, which is not working. I'm going to try another way. There is a function inside my nodes dot find. I'm going to use the another function called find function, which is again going to take node, and I'm going to pass not node, actually the title of that particular node from here. So I'll take my node and I'll just pass the title here, and I'm going to check whether So I'm looping through the nodes. I'm getting the first nodes. I'm going to check whether its title is equals to the title which I have passed. So this is also going to probably return me the right value. So I'm going to just return this. So this is going to return me a true the value or a falsy value. So I'm just checking if nodes dot find, and if when I'm doing find, it's going to take the first node. It's going to check whether the title of that node is equals to the title of the node which I have created. Now let's see what is the output of this one. So I'll go back to my terminal and let's try to add a node this time. And I'm returning a node actually. So why it is check duplicate? Okay, so it's basically returning a node, right? And so we are actually able to find a node. So if we are getting a node back, that means the node exists. And maybe if I try to add a new node, let's try with the 4. And if we are getting the undefined, that means node doesn't exist. Great. So I'm going to use this one now. So let's remove that, and I don't know why for each was not working. I'm going to check that later on. So I'm going to check if, so if I'm getting an object, right? So if I'm getting object, it's duplicate node, right? So this looks correct to me. So if I'm getting an object, that means the node exists, and that's going to negate the condition. Okay, so now I'm going to change my condition a bit. I'm going to check for, so I'm going to create a new variable here, const is duplicate, and I'm going to pass this function here. So I'm going to control X from here and paste it here. Now, when the node exists, it's going to return me an object, and when the node is not there, it's going to return me undefined, right? So when it is undefined, then actually I need to add a node, right? So I'm going to check is duplicate. If is duplicate is equals to triple equals to undefined. So if it is undefined, I'm going to add a node. If it is not undefined, then I'm going to say node already taken. So let's try that. Now I don't have a node. I have a node 3 here. So let's first list out the nodes. Okay, I'm going to try to add a duplicate node now, and it's added. So when the value of is duplicate is equals to undefined, right? I'm going to add a new node. Otherwise, I'm going to say node already taken. So we are calling the check duplicate function. I'm passing the nodes and title. Here also I'm passing the nodes and not the title. Basically, I'm passing the node. I need to pass node dot title actually. Now let's try this. And I think I have a node 3 already exists. So let me remove that duplicate one. And now let's go back to our application, and this should work now. I'm going to list the nodes. Okay, I have node 3. Let's try to add node 3 again and see that it's saying node already taken. Now let's try to add a new node which is 4, node 4. So I'm going to say node 4 and node 4, enter, and I should see the new node added. So let's use the list function actually. See that node 4 has been added. Cool. So we are using this console.log, right? Let's beautify it. Let's add some logging into our application now. So for that, I'm going to install a package, npm package called chalk npm, and see that. So chalk is used to create such a beautiful console.log messages. So let's install. So I'm not going to install the latest version of chalk, because somehow I've tried with latest version and it has some problems. So you just install the version which I'm mentioning here. So we are going to use 2.4.0. So please install this version to make it work with this video. So once our chalk is installed, I'm going to go back to my terminal, sorry, not terminal, my code editor, and I'm going to say const. I'm going to import chalk. I'll say require, and require, I want chalk. I'm going to save. Now I'm going to use chalk for all my logging messages. So when we are adding a node, right? So let's console.log, we should give user some idea, right, that the node has been added, some output. Otherwise, A user will not know. A user has to use the list command, right? So I'm going to use chalk. There is something called inverse. So you can try something like this. Maybe you can try green. Okay, and then you can say chalk dot green, and probably you can pass a function here, right? And you can say node added, something like this. Okay, and in case of here we can use chalk dot red, something like this, and you will say node already taken. So these are different function which you can use of chalk, right? So let's try to add a, first of all I'm going to clear. Let's try to add a duplicate node first. See that it's giving the error message in the red color, right? And I'm going to do something different here. Maybe I'm going to say inverse. If I say chalk dot red dot inverse, you'll see something good happening here. See that the red is a background color and the text is coming in the white. So such a messages, and here also we will try the inverse, and it's going to, let's add a new note now. So I'm going to add a new note of say 5 and 5. I'm going to press enter. See that now it's giving the message, right? The note has been added. Or maybe I can say new note added, right? That will be more meaningful. Similarly we can do here. So maybe like here also I'm going to use this green one, right? And I'll say chalk.green.inverse node is removed. So when we remove a node, right, we can say the node is removed. Let's test it, right? So I'm going to use node remove command this time. Let's remove the node number 4 and let's change the command to node app remove. See that node is removed. Similarly, we can we're logging nodes here, right? Before that, maybe we can try console.log and we will use chalk dot only inverse in this case your, and we will say all nodes, something like this. Let's try the list command now. Maybe it is there. See that all nodes, and I can see all of my nodes. And same we can do for the read nodes also. So maybe I'll take this one from here. Before logging the first node, chalk dot, I'll use a green dot inverse here, and I'll just say node, something like this. So maybe I want to read a single node, right? I'm going to say app read. I'm going to pass the title is equals to, maybe I need to want to read the node number 3, node 3. So I think that's it. There is a lot of things I have covered. I mean, I'm not going to say this is a in-depth video about node, right? But we started pretty well, right? If I go back to my notes now, we started with something called what is node, right? And we understood like node is more of JavaScript on the server side, or JavaScript in the terminal, like similar to like you can create applications like Java and PHP using node. We did a setup, right? We have installed node, we have run a simple hello world program, right? This is what we did. Then we tackled our note taking app requirement by requirement. We have broken down our requirements into 4 parts: adding note, removing a note, list all notes, and reading a note, right? And we took each requirement one by one. And while doing this, we have learned how to import the npm modules from the npm repository, right? Then we have learned how to import node built-in modules like the file system, which we have used for saving our notes into the file. And finally, we have created our notes module, which is our own module. And we have written a beautiful API, I would say, of adding a note. So these are all the APIs, right? Which are available in the notes, right? I'm saying API, basically it's a function, not an API, I would say. So add, remove, list, and reading a note. So I tried to cover a lot of ground around Node.js, but think of this video as a Node getting started guide, quick start guide, you know, and with the project. So that has given you a good hands-on, right? And we have understood the Node module system, how to getting started with the Node, how to code in Node, right? And I would suggest, take this knowledge with you, try to create some other apps. Maybe you can try to create a to-do app, or think of other ideas, which you can implement in Node. I'll come back with more Node related videos. Maybe we'll create some server, we'll create some front end and back end app, right? A full stack app using maybe React and Node, something like that. Until then, I think I should say you take care, and I'm going to see you in the next video. Goodbye.